What's the most ridiculous rule in your place of work? 2 weeks after I left my previous job, a memo went round saying people aren't allowed to look out of the windows at work anymore. It's a big ass glass building. Okay, this one is just stupid. Why? Apparently it was unprofessional. The new manager came in and made a bunch of ridiculous rules. I'd been there almost 2 years at that time and couldn't be asked anymore within a month of her being there. And as a pessimistic British adult, I do not respond well to saying in team meetings what I did today that made me proud. If anything, it brings me closer to raging and flipping all the desks over. I used to work for a large bank. We had an attendance policy that was so complicated it actually created an incentive for employees to take an entire day off rather than be tardy too often. My high school had that too. If you were late enough to miss first period, you got a cut, which was a detention. Even being late to first period 3 times counted as a cut, which was another detention. An absence was just an absence. No cuts, no detentions. My school has a rule where you came in more than 2 hours or so later, they just counted you as absent for the day, but also punished you for being late. So anytime you have an appointment or just oversleep by a little bit, you may as well just abandon the whole day. I drive valet. The company handbook says you're never allowed to back up. Ever. You absolutely cannot do the job without reverse. It's impossible. It's in there because of liability and our insurance policy. This way it can always be the valet's fault if an accident occurs ever. Malicious compliance. Oops, sorry I drove through the fence with your 80k car, but my employee handbook says I can't back up. All the extra toilet paper in the building has to stay in a single closet where it can be overseen by the toilet paper queen. I heard her shrieking the other day when she discovered someone had ordered 1 spare roll of toilet paper upstairs, so the people who work upstairs wouldn't have to walk down multiple flights of stairs when the toilet paper ran out. We had a rule like that. So we all pulled $1 and bought our own TP at Costco, double ply. At first managers were happy that they saved money on TP. Employees were mad that the company should pay for our TP, but it was a very unifying experience. Eventually managers tried to woo us back to their side when they realized people were sharing pay information and just generally creating a united front. A rule that said, if you have time to lean, you have time to clean, which fairly obviously meant if there was no work then you should be cleaning things. It was at an aircraft servicing station that was fairly small, but we needed a crew of at least 3 people for larger planes. The problem was that sometimes there were just no planes, so there was no work. We would clean for a couple hours and then just run out of stuff to clean, but according to management, that was no good. We had to be busy. It got to be that we would fight over work when it came in because everyone was so bored, and finding pretend busy work was much harder than just working. I remember getting the crew together to pick up pebbles off the taxiway for a couple hours. There's an old joke in aviation, go sweep the taxiway. So we actually did it. FS, why is there a mechanic vacuuming the lawn between taxiway A7 and B7? Because his boss is an idiot. I used to work for Amazon in Ireland and their toilet breaks were crazy. Maximum of 10 minutes a day, but also a maximum of 20 minutes per week. You had to change the status on your computer so everything was recorded, and some managers would call you out on it and even go as far as threaten your job. I had an understanding with my manager and told him if I need to take a crap then I'm going for it. Like any good manager, he just told me that as long as I give him the numbers he wants then I could do what I want. WTF did you do? Why does Amazon sound like a dictatorship? Like, was it software development? Amazon is really crazy with their productivity rules. Some people put up with it because for certain sectors having Amazon on your resume is a huge plus, but others sadly because they don't have any other job prospects. When I was in the military I saw a buddy of mine sitting outside crying. I went and consoled him best as I could. Apparently he was just depressed and unhappy. After he was feeling a bit better I went to go and find someone to tell them what was happening. They knew. In fact, he had been crying so much lately that they had instituted a no crying at your desk policy, which is why he was outside. Dear God, what the frick? The AF has something called ALS, which stands for Airman Leadership School, basically a simplistic how to be a supervisor sort of thing. The teacher asked the class what we would do if someone was crying at their desk. I had a good laugh when I told her how my squadron had handled this. I worked as a call receiver. We never saw a customer. We were only on the phones with them. Rule: your hair must only be a natural color. I dyed my hair the same exact color that someone from a different shift had. I was reprimanded. I told them that if the rule is not enforced for everyone, they couldn't single me out. Their reasoning for letting the other person have that color but not me: mine was my real hair, dyed an unnatural color. Hers was a weave that could be changed very easily. Really? Then why hasn't she been asked to change her hair? Because that crap is expensive. They gave up trying to convince me they were in the right. I had a boss who didn't like the outrageous color I had in my hair. I'm a natural redhead. One of my sisters actually got fired from a job for something similar. She's a natural blonde, but kept her hair dyed red for years. When she decided to go back to her natural hair color to cut expenses, professional dye jobs aren't cheap, her boss flipped out and insisted that she go back to red, pointing out that the company had a rule that prohibited dyed hair. He didn't believe her when she pointed out that this was her natural hair color and fired her for insubordination and violating company policy when she flat out refused to go red again. Actually, she did offer to go red again if the company paid the styling bill. When she went in to pick up her last check a few days later, she took in a handful of pictures of her younger self to prove that blonde really was her natural color. Her boss just looked at them and said, "That just means you've been violating company policy for years, and that I should have fired you a long time ago. Don't bother using us as a reference." She was talking to a lawyer about a possible lawsuit, but I don't think anything ever came of it. I work in retail and we have on-call shifts. Your name will be listed on the schedule for a certain time as a call-in, so you have to call 1 hour before your shift to figure out if they need you to work for the day. For example, you would be listed as on call for 2 PM and wouldn't know until 1 PM if you were working that evening. If you don't call in, it's considered not showing up for a shift, but there's no extra pay for the shift, whether they need you or not. So for 3 days of the week, I don't know if I have to work or not. Can't make any solid plans to do anything except call my work and ask if they need me. I can't imagine having children or elderly that need taking care of, because it would be such a hassle to arrange care for them just an hour before having to work. This is actually illegal. I actually won money from a lawsuit against Victoria's Secret and their on-call policy. Yeah, I had a feeling. I brought it up to my manager and she said you consented to it in your contract, which I later looked over and found some very vague wording on scheduling to essentially cover the ass of the company. I've heard a lot of backlash lately in the news because it's such a shady practice to cut down on scheduling costs, but I never thought to sue. I actually just put in my notice to quit because the stress of not knowing when I had to work was just too much. Not current job, but at my last job at a store/cafe, an unspoken rule, as in me and my manager were never told this by our boss, was that we were not allowed to let a health inspector see anything that they come to inspect while still getting a good grade. We followed health and safety laws, but our bosses didn't. We were one of the smaller stores/cafes in this chain of 20+ stores and cafes. The health inspector must have realized that it was the company's fault for all the health and safety breaches because we, the staff, were given near full marks on the staff's health and safety responsibilities, but the boss's responsibilities was a different story. No fly killer in store, despite them being attracted by our bakery part and us having a fly killer out back for over a month, but no one was ever sent to install it. No mouse/rat traps, only one sink. Law requires 2, one for hands and one for dishes. No hot water. The counter where we put coffee down wasn't nailed down, and we actually had a customer attempt to sue over a spilled coffee. Some of our bakery was expired, but we were made to put it out because according to our company's food manager, they looked okay, so they must be okay. The list goes on. Our manager ended up showing the health inspector months of emails and texts and WhatsApp messages informing the bosses of these health and safety breaches and asking them to be fixed, all of which were promptly ignored. Later that day our boss calls and screams over the phone at my manager, tells him that it's all our fault and it's our job to make sure the health inspector never finds out about all that. Over the next week she comes in every single day where she just watches us work from the office on the security cameras and gives out at us for every little thing and makes a massive deal over everything. Like for example, I had a mini sneezing fit one of those days and was yelled at in front of customers because I was going to infect everyone and all our food. Glad to be out of that hellhole. Last I heard a few of the stores she manages, 4-5 store managers quit all in 1 week while she was on holidays, so she took over managing those stores, are failing with massive sales drops and mass employee quitting ever since she took over them. Hope to God she loses her job. Holy crap, they ruined her holiday. Perfect revenge. I wrote the ridiculous coffee making rules for my workplace, but I had my reasons. I was a woman on the edge. The coffee was unbearable, and every time it was bad I would have a parade of people through my office complaining, and a deluge of emails wasting my time. So I wrote a guide, rules, if you will, on how to use the extremely simple drip coffee maker in our break room. I emailed them to everyone. I put 2 copies in the break room, one of them in the cupboard, where the ground coffee was kept. I went through it with people who didn't understand. Minutes of everyone's time was wasted. No improvement. Endless complaints to me. More of my time wasted. By this point I was fed up of even hearing the word coffee. The sound of the coffee maker caused me to flinch. So I ordered pre-packaged coffee grounds to take the measurement difficulty out of the equation. How can you get that wrong? I thought, naively. On the first day of what I was sure would be the new world, a coffee nirvana, I went to the coffee machine with high expectations. The senior partner had beaten me to it. She had put 4 sachets of coffee into the machine and added enough water to make 6 cups of coffee. The first mouthful nearly killed us. I went over it again with her and returned to my office, confident that this was a one-time problem. After lunch I went back to try and get a cup of coffee. My expectations were not so high. I witnessed another senior partner carefully opening the sachet of grounds and reach for a teaspoon. She carefully spooned out a quarter of the sachet into the machine, filled the machine with enough water for 12 cups and triumphantly threw the rest of the sachet away. I waited. We tasted it together. She was appalled. She had no idea why it was so weak. I started a new pot, slowly filling with despair as it brewed. I couldn't shake one thought. I work for a doctor's surgery. These people prescribe. I went back to my office. I ordered a giant container of respectable instant coffee and a padlock. I keep the ground coffee locked in my desk. I brew 4 pots a day. This takes less time than the complaints, and on my day off they make do with instant. We have a kettle. People are welcome to bring their own filter coffee and do with it what they will. Until someone can be trusted to make a pot of coffee which is not so awful as to inspire 8 people to email me multiple times a day, each one of them hitting reply all to create a small email firestorm in my inbox. This is the way things have to be. You are a fantastic writer, and I'd read that coffee guide any day.